I've never stood behind one of these newsstands in a subway. Does it get hot down here?
Oh, it gets hot. Yes, I did have to change shirts today. Yes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Basugim. So today on the show, we headed to downtown Manhattan, where I did stand, in fact, behind a newsstand on the West 4th Street subway platform, where a comedian has turned an out-of-use newsstand into an art project and is adding some light, some comedic relief to the commutes of many New Yorkers throughout the city. Plus, we were talking about flock cameras. So you're wondering, what is a flock camera? Well, it's tracking your commute potentially, your license plate, your drives, and people are protesting the use of these flock cameras, and vigilantes are vandalizing them. So we want to get to the bottom of the use of these things and the changes that are being made to these cameras. That's coming up as well. Up first, though, the Trump administration is pivoting in the war with Iran and now going after Iran's economy. Today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced new economic actions dubbed Operation Economic Outcast against Iran and sanctions on countries and partners that do business with Iran.
Treasury has mapped every node, every facilitator, and every network that Iran has used to smuggle oil and evade sanctions. Beginning today, the actions of Treasury and other agencies will tighten the noose and block every potential source of revenue that funds the IRGC and the evil Iranian regime.
Iran remains defiant. They dismissed Bessent's initial economic threat as desperate and said the U.S. is just repeating methods that have proven unsuccessful in the past. So how does this renewed economic pressure fit into the Trump administration's strategy against Iran? And could it finally force an end to this war, or could it renew the fighting? For this, I want to bring in Aaron David Miller, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Yasmin, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you as always. So Bessent said today the U.S. is imposing these quote unquote secondary sanctions, and they're targeting a few different assets, right? So they're targeting digital assets, technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. He called these 5 of Iran's most vital lifelines to other countries. And he said cutting them off is going to leave Iran with a very clear choice.
Complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy.
What do you make of these sanctions?
Look, let's just take a look back and briefly at least and try to determine why Scott Bessent gave this speech. The 2 options that the administration has tried: number 1, massive escalation, which clearly the president does not want to do, and number 2, to accept significant Iranian control over the Straits through negotiation, which he clearly does not want to do. And as a consequence, since neither of these have worked and changed Iran's core calculations, particularly with respect to the Straits, he's fallen back on this economic outcast, right? In an effort to literally cut Iran off from the global economy and asphyxiate, I think that's the word he used, Iran's economy. Look, if the United States were prepared to essentially exercise, in this case, the economic nuclear option, that is to say, to cut Iran's major trading partners off from the dollar, deny them access to U.S. banks, if in fact the administration was prepared to cut these countries off from the U.S. financial system and the dollar and keep them cut off, over time, I think the administration could break the Iranian economy. Would that change the calculation of the guys running the railroad in Tehran? I really don't know.
Iran is already heavily sanctioned. And it is a tactic that many presidents before President Trump have actually taken. And the U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz has cut off most international goods that would be going to Iran. So why would they be doing this now?
Because I think the president is stuck. Donald Trump has put himself in a box. There's no exit ramp that would leave the U.S. stronger, with more influence in the region, and have any of its war aims, ostensibly keeping Iran away from a nuclear weapon. Achieving that goal, which was the ostensible objective of the Operation Epic Fury to begin with. And I think this, frankly, unless the Iranians escalate, which they may, if these sanctions, if the Chinese comply, if Pakistan complies, if the UAE is prepared as Iran's most important financial entrepot, prepared to cut Iran off, China in particular, then I think the Iranians are going to respond militarily. They will expand their target sets against the Gulf states and probably go after, they may not want to, go after export facilities and infrastructure to make it impossible for any oil to be exported out of the Gulf. They've already essentially lowered the number of successful transits. I don't think the U.S. is prepared to have a major trade war with Iran's major partners. So again, I don't think this option is going to work. The Iranian economy is under severe pain. Oil production is down 15 to 30%. There are energy blackouts. There are water shortages. There's hyperinflation. Food costs are soaring. But the Iranians got through the Iran-Iraq War. They're other than Putin, they're most heavily sanctioned country in the world, maybe with North Korea, and they've managed to survive.
Let's say they impose these sanctions on, for instance, crippling Iran's 5 critical industries, as Bessent has put out there. The Speaker of the Parliament in Iran has said that the U.S. is not in an economic position to further restrict Iran's relations with other countries. Does Iran have the capability to withstand these sanctions if they were to be brought? Over
time, and that's time's the ultimate arbiter, has any country that has been the target and object of U.S. sanctions, no matter how onerous or punitive, ever fundamentally changed its position on an interest that it believed was vital to its political stability or its national security? I think the answer is no. And if that's the baseline, this isn't Ali Khamenei in the old Iran where there was a certain amount of hedging and risk aversion with respect to striking the United States. The guys running the railroad in Tehran are different than the old bunch. And they believe they're winning. They believe they've undermined American deterrence. They have their highly enriched uranium. It may be inaccessible. They've got it. They have leverage over the straits. And I think rather than just sit there, if in fact this economic asphyxiation strategy, that's the word that Scott Bessent used, I wouldn't disagree with the characterization of the way the Iranians have treated their own citizens as anything but evil. But he used the word evil regime, terrorist regime. And in response, they're not going to sit there and go quietly into the night. So could this be severe enough and painful enough that they would agree to begin to ameliorate or change some of their core positions, particularly on the issue of the straits? I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Could they have done this without the war, Aaron? Could they have done this without the military attacks that began back in February?
The Iranians would have responded to that, but I think that might have opened the door to the possibility of an actual negotiation. I think the death and the destruction and the existential nature of the threat that the Israelis and the Americans imposed or tried to impose on February 28th set the table for an increasing conviction. And the killing of Ali Khamenei, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, during war, steeled their resolve, because I think it changed the fundamental perception of the regime. I think the whole wartime imagery and the issue of martyrdom and the regime under fire in a crucible, all this stuff also minimized any sort of reaction on the part of the Iranian public. The legitimacy factor, I think, increased and enhanced the regime because of the war. Had they started, I mean, maybe they wouldn't have gotten Iran's attention just with an economic strategy. I don't know. But the war changed everything.
Aaron David Miller, thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So you may have noticed these cameras, right? They're on top of these poles with these solar panels on top of them, and you see them while you're driving. They are automated license plate readers. They're put out by a company called Flock Safety, also known as Flock cameras. They're collecting information about cars, about people into this database that can be accessed by police and other law enforcement across the country. It sounds pretty simple, right? But Flock cameras, they're sparking protests across the country. Now, Flock has changed some of its policies, and police say they are responding to citizens' concerns, but civil rights groups say it's still not enough.
This is a tool that places every citizen under investigation for pre-crime, and that is a clear violation of our rights.
So I want to bring in Kevin Collier. He is a cybersecurity and surveillance reporter here at NBC News. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
So for those who have not been following this whole story and situation, what actually are Flock cameras and what sparked the controversy around them?
Flock is a police technology and surveillance company, and they make a number of products, drones, gunshot detectors, stuff like that. But most famously, they make ALPRs, automatic license plate readers, which are cameras that are mounted on poles, usually busy intersections, and will track. They'll go and take several photos as a car goes by, basically every car that goes by. And in the process, get the make and model of the car and the time that it goes by, what direction it's going, and the license plate.
So when I get a notice in the mail and you see just my car and the picture of my car with a license plate and say you basically were speeding or you ran this red light or whatever, is that coming from likely a Flock camera?
No, that's a red light camera or speeding camera.
Okay, got it.
Basically similar technology. The difference here is that Flock is taking this to be part of a larger network, and they sell basically subscriptions to police departments that will say, like, hey, we're going to, for this much money, we will let you, we'll put in 5 cameras, we'll put in 10 around your city, and we will track every car that goes by. And so basically you will have a record that you can go back for the past 30 days of the movement of every single person, or not every person, every car, every vehicle that has crossed, where they're going, when they're going, blah, blah, blah. So part of the controversy with Flock is police departments can opt in to sharing locally, statewide, or nationally. So the ones that opt in nationally create effectively this giant nationwide database that any cop who's participating can log in, no warrant, and see 30 days of movement for anybody.
Even if it's out of their jurisdiction?
You can,
or they don't have a reason or a purpose to be tracking someone?
A cop in Florida can be doing this in Washington, and a cop in Southern California can be doing this in Rhode Island.
So Flock and law enforcement officers who rely on this technology, they say that it can be an invaluable tool for tracking suspects and can save policing hours. It's also noted in the past that courts have repeatedly found that, quote, using Flock devices is, in fact, constitutional in spite of these kind of security fears that are coming from advocates in favor of privacy.
There have been a number of lawsuits, both from libertarian and kind of like lefty-leaning groups that have sued cities over Flock contracts, citing the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unlawful searches and seizures. None of them have succeeded. They are still trying. Yeah. But that's where it stands right now.
There's also kind of this vigilante movement as well, yes. Protests that have been happening against these cameras. There are people who are tearing them down. There was one guy who actually showed up to a San Diego City Council meeting dressed as Darth Vader.
The Emperor is a fan of Flock, and we must continue utilizing Flock technologies so that we can follow and surveil the rebel scum as they move from playground to playground, from playground to pool, from pool to gymnasium. I need this so I can stalk my ex-girlfriend.
So this is a lot of commitment from that guy.
Yeah.
But why has the pushback increased so much recently?
It's so viral. So I've been covering surveillance in various capacities for 15 years, maybe longer, and I've never seen pushback like this. It's hard to articulate exactly why. I can point to a couple factors that I think contribute. One is it's not just an urban thing. It is in rural counties, it's in small towns, it's along the highways. And so it's not just something that's confined to the big cities as a crime enforcement tool. It's something that Red America as well as Blue America is seeing, hey, these cameras are just going up. I just learned those cameras went up without my knowledge. So that's part of it. The videos go viral. There's a lot of videos that go really viral on YouTube, on TikTok. Again, in a way that I've never seen a consistent
Videos of
people complaining about flock cameras, of people tearing down flock cameras, of people analyzing them, people ripping them apart. It's just a very viral topic. It's really in the.
But why? Have there been instances of misuse?
Yes. There have been a lot of instances of, very specifically, usually male police officers stalking either an ex or a crush, usually kind of that angle of it. And there have been multiple police officers disciplined and fired at this point. So that's a dedicated phenomenon. But honestly, I think the backlash was happening even before then. To some degree, I think it represents kind of a big tech encroachment to people. It is absolutely true that your phone carries more information about you than a flock camera is tracking. But a difference there is that for police to access your phone or your location where your cell phone is pinging or what your Gmail account says or any of that stuff, you need a warrant. And this is warrantless. That's a pretty fundamental difference. But I also do think there's some element here where this is just people have seen surveillance in this nebulous sense, and the physical cameras in my hometown, which
Something
I never saw before.
Point at. It's like very tangible.
Yeah, it brings it home in a way that this fun device that I learned to, I can't live without, that's different.
Yeah. So Flock has now said they're making some changes amidst all this backlash. What do those changes look like? And is it satisfying the people that have been protesting?
The big ones are the default retention period is no longer 30 days, it's 7 days. Though police can hold information for longer than that. If an officer is investigating a case, he can make it. He can hold the data longer than 7 days. In particular, it's just not like all the data in general.
Got it.
By default. And then Flock is supposed to flag when police officers make kind of unusual repeated searches. So the guy who is typing in his girlfriend's license plate every day, every weekday, 9 to 5, all day long, in theory, would get flagged. But the critics I talk to broadly just say, like, look, this is still, it doesn't change the fundamental problem. It's just, a shorter period of retention. It's maybe some cops will get flagged more, but it still doesn't change the broader thing of this is effectively a dragnet across much of America.
Kevin Collier, I feel like this thing is not going to go away.
It's not going away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So newsstands are a constant all over New York City on subway platforms. A lot of them, though, have been shutting down or abandoned. So one comedian, his name is Mullen, has taken over a newsstand in downtown Manhattan on the West 4th Street platform. He writes a public transportation magazine that's called a zine with other comedians. And he's giving that and other kind of fun stuff away, a rat foot, for example. It's part of this program by the New York MTA to pour life back into vacant spaces in the subway. It's kind of a mix of art and comedy, and it's providing a little bit of light for folks in the midst of their, let's be honest here, very miserable subway commute here in New York City. So what did we do? I took the train downtown to see about it. So Al, you got this really cool newsstand. Will you show it to me?
Come on in, yeah, of course.
Okay, let's go see it.
I've never stood behind one of these newsstands in a subway. Does it get hot down here?
Oh, it gets hot. Yes, I did have to change shirts today, yes.
Already? And by the way, it's only, 10 a.m. right now?
Yeah, in mid-sentence I might change again, but yes, it is very hot. It is, it's horrible down here. These fans do a lot of work. They don't do it all the way, but they help.
And the smells as well.
The smells and bells and heat, and it's a wonderful place down here, yes. So I've been making this zine for a long time that I distribute on the subway.
This is like a paper magazine.
I printed it home. It looks terrible from afar, but then when you actually hold it up close, it's filled with New Yorker cartoonists, late night writers, David Cross, Roz Chast, Jack Handy, very semi-famous people.
How did you collab with comedians like that?
Well, I am in the New York comedy scene, so I know some from that, but I also just cold emailed David Cross, and he's a really cool guy who turned something in within like 4 days and was really intrigued by it. I think a lot of people in entertainment are used to the sort of drag of like what you have to do, and then this is sort of an anti-capitalistic way to get out stuff directly to the people, and I don't know, I think they were just intrigued by the idea of it.
So then you took this magazine and
Yep.
you said, okay, now I'm going to do what?
Well, I found out about this program, and I was like, so there's all these disused newsstands. There's one across from us on the platform. There's one upstairs. There's many in like every station. So the MTA has this program, and I heard about it, and I said, wow, this is like a natural progression of a zine into a newsstand. It always happens. It's a tale as old as time.
So for people that don't spend a lot of time in New York City or have never spent time in New York City, they're listening or watching, like a newsstand on a subway platform, it's like this silver square, essentially, right, that you shove a bunch of stuff into. And normally this would be filled with like gum and drinks and magazines, and people would be able to stop by and get a snack on their way to wherever it is they're going. And instead, your newsstand is filled with a version of this zine.
Yep.
And all this stuff, by the way, is free.
It's all free. We don't sell anything. That's part of the program. We give away free stuff.
Okay.
We have trading cards of conductors. This is V is a former conductor, and we have stats about her, like what lines she would drive, and the largest object she saw was a washing machine, and we're making more trading.
Saw a washing machine on the train?
That's the largest object V saw carried onto the train.
What else?
Well, we have all the time zones of New York.
Which are all the same.
Okay, sure, but they're the only time zones that are important. Who cares about Moscow and Tokyo? We have Staten Island and the Bronx, We have a...
Let's be clear, Staten Island should be a little bit behind, maybe.
It's been said before. I won't speak on that, but yes. We have a Train Aura photo booth.
That?
I worked with these people called Glub Labs, and we found this camera that fell on the third rail and became supercharged, and then it suddenly had this superpower to be able to tell your train aura. So it takes your photo and adds sort of a garnish to it that is tied to one of the train lines. So if it's red, you're 1, 2, 3. If it's blue, you're ACE. And you have to hold the train pole, and it transmits to the camera.
This is the photo booth?
Yes. Would you like your photo taken?
Can I do it? Okay. And do I smile?
It's up to you. All right, and then we wait. So the tension is killing me.
Depending on my color, that will predict my train aura.
Yeah, there's different things. Like if you're blue, ACE, it's the longest in the system, and that shows loyalty and devotion. Take someone on a date to Rockaway Beach, and if you don't get in an argument after a long sunburned day, you're meant to be together. If not, head to JFK. So things like that. So one of the things we have is we're going to write station guides to every station in the subway, all 472. So far we have 6. We're working on it. We'll get there.
I do want to read a little bit of one of these. The Hoyt-Schermerhorn ACG is an essential worker, especially to those of us who live off the G. She's like my phone charger or my jeans. She's the order, grilled cheese and a carrot juice. I get at my bodega when I'm unwell in any fashion. I need her. I don't always think about her. I wish her nothing but happiness. I'm grateful for the way that she's been there for me in my life. It's like poetic.
Yes, that was a great reading.
What is the dream from all of this?
I mean, in a way, I'm living the dream. I didn't expect that this would happen. I don't know. Franchise another newsstand. Maybe our own train line, build a new train. No, I think just to do this, we're going to be doing like lots of cool events. We're doing a puppet show on Sunday. We're doing comedy shows. Don't tell the MTA, but we're going to bring an ice skater in here. I probably shouldn't have said that, but we're doing...
Probably shouldn't have said that.
Don't air this.
All right. That is going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you saw and you heard, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.